Okay, welcome to the Nailsin Ratings. This is kind of a follow-up on some earlier videos I did on Star Trek Discovery, the CBS All Access series, and I was very negative about it. I first looked at the trailer and then onto the series, and I reviewed a couple of the episodes, and then I bailed because it was so bad. Now, initially, one of the big problems with the show was the very look of it, because it's supposed to take place, 10 years before Captain Kirk's adventures begin. And the problem was the original series already showed us what that era of Starfleet looked like. And so the Star Trek Discovery cast and the look of the Federation in it and everything doesn't look anything like that, not even remotely close to it. And so there were possibilities that they had said it in an earlier time. It looked like a perfect derivative of Star Trek Enterprise, but that's not what they did. It could have been in the future, and they could do whatever they want, but no, for whatever reason, they wanted it in this time frame, and then just pretty much dropped the ball and everything else. Well, you needed some kind of explanation within the series to make it work, and they didn't bother to do that. They've said they've hired some guys that their whole job is to make sure it fits within continuity. Well, either you're not listening to them or you need to fire those people. But it's too late. Meanwhile, a viewer who calls himself the Man from Krypton, so Superman, said, hey, there's an explanation for the uniforms, and as he said, it's not a good one. But he's right, it's really not, but nevertheless, someone tried. And what this is that there was a tie-in novel by, David Mack, and it was called Star Trek Discovery Desperate Hours. And this was like a backstory to the Michael Burnham character in her time on the starship Shenzhou, which is the first ship she's on in the first pilot episode and all that. So this would take place at an earlier time, and it gives, like I said, background, and he kind of fleshed out some of the other characters. And in the article, which is at TrekCore, and I'll put the link in the description below so you can go and read it. Brian Fuller brings this guy in to write this tie-in novel, and a lot of these properties will do that. There's either novels or comic books and stuff like that. Most notably, of course, Star Trek and Star Wars are always doing this. And so this was, and there'll be little details, like sometimes there'll be an episode that mentions a planet and they move on. So then they'll have a novel about that, and that's all very interesting. But this novel goes on to explain things that the show should have done. And that's basically the point of this video. You can't just depend on these extra little comic books and novels and stuff to make your movie or TV show work. It needs to be on the screen. And it wasn't. So this David Mack guy actually thinks this through, whereas the people behind the show didn't. So right off the bat, hey, how come the uniforms look different? Well, he goes on to say, well, there's different levels of officers and what have you, and classes for different of the ships and the subsets, whereas the Shenzhou was an older ship and part of a different class, whereas the Enterprise is the Constitution class ship, and so they've got a whole different uniforms for guys that are going to be working in that level. And of course, the Enterprise at this point is the brand new version of ships they got, and it's far more advanced and powerful and everything like that. And the story goes into details like that, where the Shenzhou's impressed with what the Enterprise can do. That even though comparison between the two shows, wow, it looks like Shenzhou is far more advanced, but oh no. It's just a certain style and look of the Enterprise, and it actually is more advanced about what it can do rather than what it looks like. So, there you go. It's a kind of little simple thing. But again, it's in the novel. It's not in the show. So he go, and the uniform thing, I think I discussed that in some of the levels. All they had to do was explain that the Discovery in the story is like this brand new experimental ship that's doing something that no other ship has ever done before, and it's all for the purposes of the war. It's a top secret project and all that sort of thing. So basically, you could say like the crew looks different in their uniforms and whatnot because they're part of a black ops section of the Federation. This could have been a whole story that was always rather secret and top secret, and not a lot of people knew about it. And now we're finally going to see a story about what these guys were about. That would have been a cool idea. Did they do it? No, they did not. The entire Federation, they're all in the blue jumpsuits, and that's just the way it is. This novel goes on to apparently to where like this, the look you see of Captain Pike and then Kirk and all that was something new and different that they started for the Constitution class of ships. The problem with that is that whenever you look in the old show and when Kirk was talking to an admiral on the monitors and what have you, they all had the same shirts on, and some of them were like at star bases and stuff like that. So the only difference was they had different badges on the shirts. The ones you see now, where everybody in Star Trek has that same badge, was originally just supposed to be for the people on the Enterprise, and different starships would have different little logos on their badges. But yeah, oh well, there's one they never explained in the proper show. Kind of a minor thing. But here, it's just the differences are quite jarring between the two, and it was just bad all around. But this David Mack guy does the job the show should have done, because he actually stops and thinks about this. It's pretty blatantly obvious, you would think, but somehow the producers of the show just missed all of this. And so he gives an explanation for it. He tried, and so kudos to Mr. Mack. I have not read the novel, but if you want to look that up, go ahead. But again, it needs to be on the screen. This does not excuse this mistake. Now, even if they'd fixed the uniforms and everything, this show is pretty bad. So I don't know that wouldn't have saved it, but it still would have been a better jumping off point for the show had they stuck to these very obvious details. As for the technology and the hologram communications and stuff, which was very jarring again, because wait a minute, none of the other shows did it. Well, he says this was something they did that was really fancy and cool, but that it was a bandwidth hog on the subspace channels, and they eventually dropped it for just the simpler communications that you see in the successive Star Trek shows. And it was only done for aesthetics, and they figured, hey, it's more trouble than it's worth. So, but again, he thinks this through. He thought about that, and he just works it in and still is able to deliver his story, which, interestingly enough, they encounter Captain Pike's Enterprise in the story, which, now, doing that in the series wouldn't have been necessary, but of course, it'd be cool to see it, but at the same time, you got to recast all that, and maybe people wouldn't really identify it, because people still have problems with the J.J. Abrams movies. The first one I'll always defend and stand by. The second one is complete garbage, and the third one, it's okay, but then it has that, rock and roll saves the world thing, and so, yeah. Still, we're left with the only good Star Trek show right now is called The Orville. So, that's the one you'll have to check out for good Star Trek shows. But again, it needs to be on the screen, and that goes for you too, Star Wars Last Jedi. You can talk about novels and comic books, but no, nothing's going to save that disaster. And this isn't going to save the Star Trek Discovery either. But interestingly enough, Brian Fuller, who got the boot from the show, probably because he noticed this stuff too, but he's the one who apparently hired this guy to write the novelization. Man, how embarrassing is that the tie-in figures things out that the show apparently never does. So I don't know that I'm going to bother to go back in. I've seen other reviews from successive episodes of Star Trek Discovery. I don't know, because I just was so irritated and upset with the initial episodes. But yeah, the mirror universe plot and all that. But a lot of the stuff that's been revealed in these reviews, I could see coming. So it's not that big of a deal. I don't know that this show should continue. But They've already announced there'll be another season, so but anyway, interesting little tidbit here about the uniforms. About somebody thought about it, but nobody on the show did. So there you go. Needs to be on the screen. You can't depend on comic books and novels to do the work for you. So there you go, and I will put the interview with David Mack in the description below, along with my stores. Please check them out, and please subscribe, and I'll do more videos for you. Thank you for watching and listening.